Well, the Trump administration is ramping up the pressure on Venezuela. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio says the U.S. plans to designate a cartel it claims is run by Venezuela's president as a foreign terrorist organization. In a statement released on Sunday, Rubio said the Cartel de los Soles is headed by Nicolás Maduro and other high-ranking individuals of the illegitimate Maduro regime who have corrupted Venezuela's military, intelligence, legislature, and judiciary. Neither Maduro nor his cronies represent Venezuela's legitimate government. Well, the announcement comes as America's most advanced aircraft carrier arrives in the Caribbean. The U.S. Southern Command released this image of the USS Gerald R. Ford carrier strike group, confirming that it is now there. Part of the largest buildup of U.S. firepower in the region that we've seen for generations. And over the weekend, the U.S. military released this footage of its latest strike on an alleged drug trafficking boat, killing 3 people on board. Since early September, such U.S. strikes have killed at least 83 people in 21 attacks in the Caribbean and Eastern Pacific. Well, meanwhile, on Sunday, U.S. President Donald Trump suggested that he could hold talks with the Venezuelan president.
We may be having some discussions with Maduro, and we'll see how that turns out. They would like to talk.
All right, joining me now is James B. Story. He served as U.S. ambassador to Venezuela from 2018 to 2023 under both Presidents Biden and Trump. Ambassador, it's good to have you on the program. The U.S. plans to designate the Venezuelan Cartel de los Solos a terrorist group, and it alleges that it is being led by the country's president, Nicolás Maduro. What would be the significance of this change?
Well, I don't think it necessarily gives any more authorities to the authorities that the president has been deploying against the narcotics organizations. Perhaps it broadens it a bit. It gives him a different definition of the organization that he's going after. But the president has all of the resources in the region to take directed action. This ramps up that pressure to some extent, so it's a political message as well. But in actuality, even without designating them as an FTO, I believe that the president has his belief that he can act unilaterally now.
Do you think that this show of military might, we've got the USS Gerald Ford there in the Caribbean, is that proportional to the perceived threat coming from Maduro and his, as they say, his narco-terrorist state?
Yeah, well, it's not a counter-narcotics operation. This is not a flotilla you put out for counter-narcotics. I ran counter-narcotics in Colombia for 2 years and then, or 3 years, and in the Western Hemisphere for 2 years. And usually you'd use white hulls, you use Coast Guard cutters, helicopters, perhaps operating out of a base we have in Curacao, these types of activities, working with our partners to go after these transnational criminal organizations. What we have here is something that is obviously overwhelming amount of force for that mission and an overwhelming amount of force even for the Venezuela problem set. The issue here, the Venezuelans, do they have the ability to go toe-to-toe with the United States? Absolutely not. I highly doubt any Venezuelan pilot will enter one of their Sukhoi fighter bombers they have from Russia and go up against F-35s or the F-18s off the Gerald Ford, for that matter. The question really is, okay, we have this force in the region, now what? What is the next step that the president's going to take? You've indicated they're talking about talks. As someone who's been engaged in talks with the Maduro regime, I would submit that the contours of that discussion should be about his departure.
His voluntary departure, or also communicating the threat that if you don't leave on your own reconnaissance, we will make you leave?
Well, I think that threat exists, right? Under the first Trump administration, he would often say all options are on the table, which was interpreted to mean military options in Venezuela. Well, now the options that are on the table are on the front doorstep of Maduro. I believe the implication here is that if Maduro doesn't take the proactive measure of leaving, that we could help him see the door ourselves. But let's remember, There was a vote that took place in Venezuela in July of last year, and overwhelmingly, the Democratic opposition won the election. Yet Maduro refused to leave.
Are you confident, Ambassador, that if there were to be an exit by Maduro, that there would be a political infrastructure in place that would fill a possible power vacuum that would be left by Maduro's departure? I mean, is Venezuela prepared for a chapter to end overnight?
Well, one of the things that I believe is incumbent upon the leader of the opposition, Maria Corina Machado, and Edmundo Gonzalez, who won the presidency in the election of last year, is to lay out their 24-hour, 48-hour, 1 week, 3 month, 6 month strategy on how they're going to govern. Because let's remember that all of the institutions inside of Venezuela have been eaten away and destroyed. They're no longer independent institutions. So let's say that we wake up tomorrow and Maduro's gone, Maria Corina Machado is there, Edmundo Gonzalez flies in, and now you have to deal with a few issues. One, reinstitutionalizing the country. That's going to take time. That's not going to be overnight, and it's not going to be linear. The second big problem is that Venezuela is a failed state. It's a failed state. They don't control their own territory. You have dissident elements of the FARC and the ELN, two Marxist drug trafficking organizations, FTOs, from Colombia, who are now inside of Venezuela, as well as the Cartel de los Soles, the Tren de Aragua, and of course, Hezbollah and other actors operating inside. So you're going to need the military as an institution, the courts as an institution, to help you deal with the criminality and illegality in that country. That's a tough order. It's a tall order. And were I Maria Corina Machado and others, I'd be laying out, hey, this is what a future looks like without Maduro in the country. And that future is going to have a place for all kinds of political thought, not just ours.
Well, I hear what you're saying, Ambassador, and you're describing a man whose political power, whose hold on power is weaker than perhaps it's ever been, and yet he doesn't seem like he's about to pick up and go. I mean, we were talking in the newsroom, there was video from the weekend or last week that showed him singing John Lennon. In front of cameras for the whole world to see. I mean, that doesn't look like a narco dictator who is about to lose everything.
And 4 days before the Berlin Wall came down, the Washington Post said our policies were flawed and we needed to rethink our engagement between NATO and the Soviet bloc. Right? I mean, things don't happen until they happen, and then they happen quite quickly. Part of Maduro's strategy right now is trying to generate sympathy and show support internally. He really doesn't have any. He claims that there are 8 million members of this civilian militia in the country. He didn't even get 4 million votes in the last election. I highly doubt he has 8 million supporters in the country. He also is trying to generate the sympathy of the regional governments, such as President Lula in Brazil and President Petro in Colombia. And I understand that. He wants us to look like poor Venezuelans against the empire, as he likes to call us. But the fact of the matter is, he's been waging war against his own people for over a decade, and that's on him. And so he can go out and try to generate the support and generate this sympathy and make these kinds of overtures. But I don't think that really underscores the fact that he believes he's comfortable where he is right now. I certainly wouldn't be comfortable where I am.
You have seen the U.S. go back and forth on Venezuela, from the carrot to the stick, if you will. And there are some who say that mixing sanctions and concessions has produced total mistrust of America by Venezuela, which is the opposite of what Washington would want. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, I guess the premise is a little flawed, because the opposition in Venezuela has engaged in negotiations with the regime multiple times. They've had the Vatican involved, Norway involved, Barbados involved, Mexico involved, United States involved. And there's no trust in the idea that somehow the democratic opposition has to give up space in its belief in the fundamentals of liberty in order to generate some kind of an agreement with a dictatorial regime. I think that begs the question a little bit. The fact of the matter is that people have already spoken. So the fact that now Maduro is trying to negotiate, this is a case of him You can either call it kick the can down the road or Lucy in the football. And I think everybody's tired of being Charlie Brown trying to kick that football. He only wants to negotiate. For him, it's a monologue which says, hey, I'm going to stay in power whether or not you like it. Let's just negotiate how I'm going to stay in power. I think that's a flawed approach.
Ambassador, good to have you on the program. We're certainly appreciative of your valuable insights, too, into what is happening there in South America, in Venezuela. We appreciate your time tonight. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.